Welcome back, everyone. I'm here today with Jackie Knechtel and Justin Faerman, who are my friends that run the Flow Consciousness Institute and have made the time to be here today and share their wisdom with us. Hi, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Whoa.
All right, we're off to a good start. Synchronicities right off the bat.
We do that all the time. And I love that you can properly say my last name because I still can't.
I was noticing
thank
that.
you.
Oh, right. That's right. I pronounce her name.
Oh, that's how it's said.
Yeah, I pronounce your name in German every time.
Can you pronounce my name in German?
Oh, I pronounced yours too in German, didn't I?
Yeah, probably.
Well, let's just go with that. Jackie Knechtel and Justin Faerman. Perfect. Guys, I'm so glad to have you here. I'm excited to speak with you. Some of the people listening have seen Jackie at the DNX conference in Portugal, right? That was
because we did both years. The first year I emceed it and did a workshop, and the next year Justin and I did a keynote and a workshop. So they may have seen both of us.
I know. So you're basically, everybody knows you guys, which is so great. I'm excited about this. Yay.
We love DNX.
Yeah. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is flow consciousness and synchronicity. Surprising, really. I know that you guys have taught over 10,000 people all over the world. You do a lot of research on the topic. It is, I find it extremely fascinating to follow you guys, which is why I'm so grateful to have you here and ask you a couple of questions. So let's start by really differentiating what is the difference between flow consciousness and a flow state?
Yeah, it's a great question. And flow states are really what people are most familiar with and what most people are talking about. So a flow state would be a temporary state of non-ordinary consciousness or peak performance. So that's, akin to being in the zone. So flow states talked about by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and some other people have kind of popularized the term in the collective. But a flow state is by its very nature temporary. Whereas flow consciousness, we call it more of a stage of psychospiritual development, and it's a way of being, and it's something that you can be in all the time.
Yeah. A practical way to think about it is like a new operating system for your mind, right? Psychospiritual stage development. That's what, you'd say in a university, but for most people, it's like, it's a whole new way of looking at the world and thinking and making decisions and just operating. And it allows you to sync to a completely new reality and a level of reality that most people don't normally experience, where things start to become effortless.
Talk to me about effortless. I like effortless. I like everything to be in sync and effortless. I was reminded this weekend, I was trying to organize something and it was just so hard. And then all of a sudden I realized maybe I just need to turn around and look the other way. And not surprisingly, there are plenty of other options and alternatives that were effortless.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Effortlessness is really, if you think about it, it's really the art and science of being at the right place at the right time in tracking the path of least resistance, right? Because experiences only ever come into our reality based on where we are or where we've been or who we've talked to. And so when you're in the right place at the right time, then you end up syncing up with those things that are there to actually support you and help you accomplish the goals and the things that you're trying to do, right? So you don't have to like go out there and hustle and grind and make it happen. Like that's how most people operate. They go, okay, I have a goal, and so I'm just going to do everything I possibly can that I can think of to like move towards that goal, or the things that seem like the best way to move me towards that goal. But the problem is that you can only really see a very small sliver of ways something could happen with your mind. And so you end up locking yourself into a path that's usually not as efficient as if you operated in flow, where instead it's not about hustling and grinding to get to the outcome. It's like, okay, how do I track these signals that I have within me and that are being given to me by life, like synchronicities, for example, like you mentioned, that are trying to guide me down the path of least resistance. And if you track those instead, what ends up happening is you have an effortless experience and it's a lot easier as a result. and faster.
Yeah, and there's another piece of it too. It's working against all of the programming and conditioning that we have around things have to be hard and nothing good comes easy, and we all have these pre-programmed beliefs and work ethic that's really just deep programming. So as you start to reprogram that and really come into more alignment with your passion, your purpose, and the things you actually want to be doing, not what you think you should be doing, there's this quality of effortlessness. And so it doesn't mean that you're not doing anything. It's not like, lying in a hammock, in Tulum all the time. Although
there's nothing wrong with that.
I know that's a big part of your day and ours as well. So there is, in one sense, things can truly be effortless, and it's a quality of effortlessness when you're so in alignment with the things that excite you and inspire you and light you up, that you're taking inspired action towards the things that you want, rather than, everything having to be slogging and just really forcing yourself to do things that you don't want to do.
Yeah, and I think there's also, for me, and I've learned this from you guys, of course, there are ways that I think it's supposed to work, or, a situation looks a certain way and I envisioned it a certain way. I'm big on visualizing everything I want, and I want things the way I want them. And I have delusions of grandeur, and they're extra fabulous and they look amazing. And then I just kind of hang myself in the process because I'm completely overlooking that it might look slightly different, and it's way more effortless and easier and probably expansive. But I'm so hung up on my visualization that I'm missing the cues.
Mm.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's usually a challenge, or something that we help people work through, is like learning to not be in like the have to make it happen, hustle and grind mode. Not that that's necessarily the space that you're in, but like, even if you're, working smarter and it's like, okay, I'm not going to hustle and grind, but like, I still think it has to happen this way. It's like, there's an element of surrender where we just actually like have to trust, but it's not a blind trust. Like, I think this is where a lot of people get hung up too. They go, oh, I'm just supposed to trust that like, everything is just going to happen. It's like, well, it's not that you're just completely letting go. Flow is actually about taking action when it's appropriate to take action, and sitting in your hammock when it's appropriate to sit in your hammock. So the art is really knowing when to do what. And that's where the magic is,
And so many people are trying to control or drive an outcome, because they need that certainty, or they're coming from a place of really wanting things, like you said, to look a certain way, but they're so focused on it showing up in that way that the mind isn't seeing all of the other possibilities, because our minds are so limited. And so if we're kind of in this narrow focus, it cuts off everything else in the periphery. So it's like being open, on one level, it's visualizing and focusing and projecting your intention to create a desired outcome, but then not being attached to that being the only way, because there's so many infinite possibilities of other ways that it can happen that are often so much better that we could have never dreamt of. So it's like really just kind of holding it loosely, rather than trying to control and drive a particular outcome.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I'm somebody who likes to manifest and then hold my expectations so hot tight that I smother whatever magic I might have wanted to create within that container.
I've been there, sister. I'm former control freak here, so I know all about it.
Yeah. Every time something goes wrong in my life, it's exactly for that reason.
Okay,
yeah.
What not to do. Check.
Yeah, I mean, we have so many examples of how this has worked for ourselves and our clients in this. There's so many things that have come into my reality that I could have never imagined would ever happen, whether it was, working in Saudi Arabia, or just introductions to people that are so beyond, the people that are hardest to reach, that I thought there's no way I'd get introductions to them, that just kind of show up in my life, and things like that are beyond my mind's capacity to create that as a possible scenario. So the more it's a process, right? The more you start to build that trust, the more you can surrender to it. So it's not like, one day you're just like, oh, I'm just going to surrender and let go of everything. It's a muscle that you need to continually practice flexing. And each time you kind of let go of that control and surrender, it becomes easier and easier. And then, that becomes your default.
Yeah. You prove to yourself that it works through testing it out. That's like typically what we tell people. Some people are willing to leap. Not that everyone's always needing to leap to be in flow, but like some people like to dip their toe in the pond, and some people like to run naked into a freezing lake, So there's like different spectrums of approaching this way of life. And so you can both work. You'll just, move faster if you jump into the pond. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm someone who likes to overcorrect, so I think smothered things by overcorrecting and just holding on too tight. I've also napped myself out of opportunities, because I'm like, well, it's going to show up. I'm just going to stay right here in my hammock, and then miss my cues there too, that sometimes taking the next action is what opens the doors and possibilities. Staying in place isn't going to do it either.
Yeah, that's a good insight. And sometimes those little actions, those inspired actions that you're taking. And a lot of people are always asking us, they're trying to get clarity on what their purpose is or their bigger vision is, but it seems so out in the future that they don't even know what to do. So they're kind of in this overwhelm but I don't even know what the small actions are that I can take. And once you take the littlest inspired action, the thing that's exciting you in the moment, that's like a breadcrumb that's going to lead you to the next thing. And so the more breadcrumbs you follow, the path becomes clear. So using that as a compass is really effective.
Exactly. And so in my life, what shows up all the time is that it doesn't have to be a big inspired action. It doesn't even have to be something, thinking about and thinking through. So, when we had Deepak Chopra here on the podcast, for example, I had this like big list of obviously all the people I wanted to have on here. And then, the way it started happening was that I actually had a very uninspiring day, and I was asked to be somewhere, and I decided to go and show up because, I was asked to be there. And I ended up just simply like standing in front of the coffee stand with Deepak Chopra, and I'm like, oh, that works, Like, I could have never imagined that this seemingly insignificant action that I didn't want to do, but it seemed very important to someone else to show up for it, that would lead to something really important to me. I had actually put on my list of things I wanted to do.
Yeah,
that's exactly how it works.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's there's this element of trust to it. And sometimes, you end up in this is actually a really interesting thing, right? So sometimes, like, what do you do? Like, how do you find flow? Like, you didn't feel inspired to go, but you went, right? You went anyways, and you still had a really amazing synchronicity. So what's going on there? And it's like, well, even if you end up doing something that's like less inspired than you had wanted, if you're doing it, like, you can't be doing anything else. You're doing that thing now, so you better be all in on that thing, and this is like where it's like, okay, practicing radical acceptance and really trusting that, okay, this is where I'm at. I'm here. I'm going to make the most of this. I'm still going to follow the flow cues and really like track flow through this experience. And you can still have amazing things happen, even though, you maybe preferred to be somewhere else, even though once that happened, I bet you preferred to be there.
Right. And that's the thing, is like, we all have these lists of things that we think we have to be doing, or we think we should be doing. And I think personally should be just eliminated from our vocabulary, because, you have this list of things that you think you have to do, or you should do, or you're going to be disappointing others. You're going to be, not fulfilling different commitments and things. And, really what would serve you is taking a nap or going for a walk or doing this other thing, which then, you could be meeting the person that you need to meet, or just having this incredible synchronicity.
Totally. I'd say my appearance at this event was more out of a false sense of obligation, but the pull was strong enough to show up. And I think what got me in the right mindset was that I have this practice of like, well, I'm here, I might as well, like develop this moment to moment awareness of like, I'm here, I have no idea who's whom, what's going on here. I don't even know, I don't want to be here. But, let's just take a look around and see who's here, who's interesting, who can I talk to? And I turn around and there's Deepak Chopra, right? And you're like, well, there you go. Hello. And it's the switched on that moment to moment awareness that I was actually able to see. Otherwise, I'm quite convinced it would have been possible because I could have stood next to him for like an hour and never seen him.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we've been to a couple of events where he's been hanging out, and he's always by himself. So just know that, if there's someone standing by themselves somewhere, it's probably Deepak, so go talk to him.
Right. I know, and he's super approachable too. He's like, hey.
He's super friendly.
Yeah.
I know. So what's next for you guys?
What is next? Well,
a lot of things on deck. One, we're going next month to Puerto Vallarta to create our teacher certification. So we've had a number of our students who want to teach these practices and this methodology with their clients and in their communities. And so we are taking the leap earlier than we imagined we would to create our Flow Mastery teacher certification. So that's on the immediate horizon, but then there's a lot of other projects in the works.
Yeah, totally. I'm about to launch into publishing a new research paper on using intuition in life and particularly in business to really kind of go quantum in your results and also literally tap into quantum aspects of yourself. And so I'm excited, and we're excited to bring that out and show people just how essential this tool is for really succeeding in the phase that we're moving into as a culture. Things are getting so complex out in the world. I mean, literally, to just keep track of like all the developments that are happening in just one industry or just your niche or whatever, it's a full-time job. And that's just like siloing down into one thing. And so there's so many new technologies and new innovations coming online and all these different things. And then, people are telling us the robots are going to take over our jobs and everything's going to be automated. And you're just like, okay, I just have to figure out my marketing and like put food on the table and live a nice life. And it's like, how do you deal with this incredible complexity? And intuition is really the way to navigate that. And so we're excited to bring like this whole set of tools and research that we're doing out into the world and start to help people develop really masterful skills so that they can thrive in whatever's going on, whether it's like an economic downturn or there's some crazy robot stuff going on in the future, or, whatever's happening and whatever they're doing, like this is the way that nature's encoded people to thrive in any circumstance. So between that, the teacher training, continuing to speak and teach all over the world, and, developing our trainings is like, it keeps us pretty busy.
Yeah, and I've been inspired to embed our methodology into a children's film. So collaborating with a lot of really, really phenomenal, interesting people in the children's television world, and also feel inspired to help.
Teaching children how to tap into flow consciousness and intuition.
So the interesting thing is children naturally live that way, and then it's conditioned out of them. So really, it's a way to really activate consciousness at a multi-generational level, by working at an archetypal level through story. So really, just like in the way Star Wars or something does, just really gives you a deeper understanding of the Force and things like that. It's embedding the teachings in the storyline of a children's film, I think, is a really exciting and interesting way to get this work out into the world. And then also recently been inspired to help develop curriculum for prisons and things like that. And so bringing this work, creating a social impact arm of our work where we can support at-risk, drug-addicted, incarcerated populations who wouldn't normally have access to these types of healing tools.
Wow, that's incredible. That's real. Well, keep us posted. We would love to learn more about that. I love that you're working with underprivileged populations that wouldn't have access to it. And of course, children, because what better way to make sure that we're keeping that natural ability alive than teaching them, that it is what their natural state is actually what they want to hold on to over.
Yeah.
Just don't grow up.
Yeah.
Like, don't.
Or, it's for the parents and the other generations that are, watching it with them, that it starts to activate something for them.
Where there's kids and parents.
Right, exactly.
The baseline is do not listen to what people tell you. Stick to what you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Can you elaborate a little bit on this and your experience on working with children?
So we haven't worked with children per se with this methodology, although, I spent many years working with children, in my earlier career. And it's really, if you watch children, they naturally navigate the world in flow. So they're following their excitement and their inspiration from moment to moment without worrying about, what other people think and what they should be doing. And, there's no people pleasing until, they start to grow up and structure is imposed. And then there's all these rules to follow. And so then they start to color in the lines, and, their imagination and creativity and innovation is ultimately diminished. So, you can learn so much from watching children and how open they are and how their imagination is so vivid. And then, people start to tell them, no, Johnny, the sky isn't purple, it's blue. And, just kind of take that away and create boxes and limitation. So it's really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, that's true. I went to a Waldorf school, so I feel
nice.
Yeah, right. I feel really lucky. I wasn't unschooled as much as others.
So is the sky still purple for you?
No, but I thought for the longest time geometry is like making perfect circles with your toes, and using colored crayons. Yeah. But then I went to a public school, right? I transferred over, and it was a rude awakening. I was like, what?
Oh,
I feel like
Sylvia, stop coloring with your toes.
like, why?
Oh, that's super interesting. We'll have to talk about that sometime. I'm so curious what a transition would be like, going from like, open flow type learning to like, okay, you're in the matrix now. Congrats.
It was very traumatizing. I can tell you that. It was very traumatizing. Just the fundamental assumptions did not appeal to me and didn't occur to me. And I didn't know how to speak to people, and the conversations were just so confusing to me. And I just ran up against so many walls and limitations and obstacles. And at the same time, I had been taught how to circumvent them, because as long as you can create an argument for whatever you wanted to do, there was always a way to find it. And so, I went into the public school bylaws, like, well, if you don't agree with me, I'm going to have to find a way to make you agree with me, because obviously the way you see the world isn't working for me. So we're just going to have to work this out, That would have been, that was it.
Yeah. And that's not to say that structure and rules and laws and everything isn't valuable, but it's really just kind of having an awareness around where creativity is being stifled, or, people are taught to think a certain way, and that really limits their innovation and creativity. Or even I was at an event the other day, and they played this game where it was based on this guy who traded a red paper clip and ultimately traded up to get a house for a paper clip or something. And so everyone was given a certain set of instructions to follow over the lunch break. And, most everyone followed the rules and, played in the way that it was supposed to be. And then there was one guy who just asked the staff for an entire box of red paper clips. So it was like, why limit myself to one when I could, have all of these and then go out and trade it up. And you could see the people or there was another group that 3 guys partnered up, and as a team, they were more inspired and having more fun. And they went out and came back with a whole pile of things that they traded up, amazing things that they got. But it was, the people who just kind of followed the rules as they were given, maybe they had some success, but it's the people who really thought outside the box and made up their own reality that had a vastly different experience.
Yeah. That is something so important. I actually had a conversation this weekend with a stranger by the beach, and I made a comment that I said that I don't like the word no, and I don't hear it very often because in my reality it just simply doesn't exist. It's just my reality is usually if that's a no, we're gonna reposition, or maybe there's another flow in it, and so I don't hear no very often. And his suggestion to me was that no is healthy, that I wasn't stretching my imagination and challenging my boundary, challenging myself enough if I don't hear no. And I just thought that was so interesting because that is so not my experience, because I feel I'm very expansive and creative and pushing imagination and boundaries, but it says a lot about the way he sees the world. Everything's hard and challenging, and like when you get push further. And I'm like more like, well, there's like lots of creative ways to make this happen. We're just going to be on the same page.
Well, you touched on two important pieces in that. One, perception is everything. It's our beliefs and perceptions and how we see the world and see others, and the lens that we view life that ultimately shapes our reality. And there was another piece about it that just kind of left.
Well, yeah, it's totally true. I mean, like, there's an interesting thing that happens. I know you experienced this for sure, Sylvia, where it's like, especially when you kind of break out of, the normal rhythms of the world, and you kind of live like, and you travel all over, and you kind of tune into these communities like DNX and people that are living differently. And so you kind of get around these communities, and people are thinking differently, and they're seeing the world in a more expansive way. And so you kind of get sucked into that, and you're around people that are, sharing similar belief structures. And it's like, and it's really supportive, and it's nourishing, and it's an important part of maintaining and getting into flow. But then you have these moments where you have to like interface with people that are not living on that wavelength. Like, for example, when you're at the airport, or, for us, we're moving right now. And so we're like, on the phone with different, people that are renting their houses, and we're talking to all of our friends. And it's so interesting to watch all of these limiting beliefs that people are projecting. Oh, it's so hard to find housing. There's nothing on the market in Santa Barbara. I'm like, really? Because Zillow is showing me 452 listings in downtown Santa Barbara right now. So it's interesting that you don't think there's anything, because there's definitely housing. And it's like, but they won't even let themselves look and like check these things. And so it's really fascinating. And it's encouraging me to like double down on the space of possibility. And in doing that, we're finding all these like amazing deals, and like all these different places that are like awesome, that other people won't even let them see, because they're like, okay, that's just not possible, or that's not in my budget range, or whatever,
Right. And I remember the piece that I wanted to speak to is, everyone's like, wow, how do you get all of these amazing things in your life? And so often it just comes down to, I asked for it. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. I just asked for what I want. And sometimes it's so absurd and so ridiculous, but I get it anyway because I asked, and I have a deep belief that I'm worthy and that all of this is available and possible. So, I don't have the fear or the self-doubt or all of these things that are holding me back. And it's really sometimes just that simple. And even, how I ended up emceeing DNX. If you remember, we were trying to coordinate in Europe because we both had, speaking engagements in different countries, and you said that you were going to be speaking at DNX. I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Do they need any more speakers? And you said, no, they're fully booked. And I was like, well, in my reality, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Would you be open to asking? And you reached out to Marcus and Feli, and they said that the host backed out, and would I be willing to MC it?
Like,
so a possibility
beforehand. Yeah.
I missed what you said.
I think literally 20 minutes before the MC had like backed out, 20 minutes before.
Right.
It was crazy.
And that was a possibility that I didn't even envision, but because I was bold enough to ask you that, and you were bold enough to ask them that, this entirely different amazing possibility arose. So often people hold themselves back because they're too afraid to even ask because of their worthiness or their, lack of self-confidence, or, all of these limiting beliefs that they have hold them back from even asking for what they want.
Yeah. I mean, it's the house here in Tulum. Naturally, I was late to the game to get a house here in Tulum during busy season because these things don't occur to me in time. And I woke up one day and said, this feels like a good idea. I shall inquire about this immediately. And the first two people I spoke to that I knew here said, it's impossible, never going to happen. You're too late. What are you even thinking? The third person said, oh yeah, of course I have a place.
Yeah, exactly, right?
I went back to the first two and said, see, 6 minutes.
Yeah, you just keep asking, you get the answer you want, right?
Yeah. But most people would have stopped after, the first person said that and kind of shut it down. They'd say, oh yeah, you're right. I'm never going to find anything. So they wouldn't even look, or they wouldn't even ask other people.
Right. And I just felt it was a little rude to suggest such negativity to me when there's so much opportunity out there and so much possibility at all times. That I was a tad bit offended. I'm like, ugh.
I don't choose to exist in your reality. Thank you very much.
That's very limited thinking. That's a direct from you.
I mean,
you can blame it on us.
Yeah.
You can use that whenever you want.
Yeah, just blame it on us.
Quotes I use from you too. One, Jackie Knechtel saying, that's very limited thinking when somebody comes with negativity. And then Justin, yours is, what's my favorite quote of yours? Oh, when somebody says that, opportunities, something, when they negate opportunities, it's like, well, then you're just leaving money on the table if you can't consider the possibilities.
Yeah. Nobody wants to do that. Yeah.
Right?
And all of a sudden everyone's listening.
Yeah. Totally. But it's like, it's funny, and it's like, and they're also like, these are like seriously deep ways of like perceiving your reality that launch you into a trajectory that, most people just can't even conceive of. And it's like, and that's one of the challenges that we have is like, how do we talk about this in a way that most people don't go, yeah, right, because the kind of things that happen, I mean, like literally they're extraordinary, like the most amazing things happen to people. One of this woman who went through our program, she's like 2 weeks in, and she sends us a message. She's like, oh my God, I was just, I was following my intuition. Next thing I know, I ended up at a billionaire's wedding in India, hanging out with Ariana Huffington and Beyonce. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, exactly. And like that experience, the kind of people you meet there, and just like having that experience, like you can completely change the trajectory of your life like that and launch you into a level of reality that just keeps you in this field of infinite possibilities over the course of the rest of your life, And for people that are just used to, saying that's not possible, this is in the box, it's like, well, no, there's a very possible larger reality out here that's waiting, for those who are willing to just kind of take a couple steps off the edge of what they think is possible,
Totally. And it's waiting for all of you guys listening. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. We're going to post, obviously, all the important links on how to find you and how to get in touch with you below this podcast. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Oh, it was super fun. Always great to be with you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much, Sylvia. I love it.